My dear brothers and sisters, one of the greatest traps of this dunya is the desire to please everyone. We wake up worried about opinions, we sleep thinking about reactions, and slowly, without realizing it, we begin to live for people instead of living for Allah. Ask yourself honestly, how many times have you stayed silent when you should have spoken the truth? How many times have you said yes when your heart was screaming no? How many times have you exhausted yourself just to keep others comfortable? And what happened in return? Disappointment, burnout, emptiness. Because the truth is simple yet painful. You can never please everyone. Even the most loved human beings were criticized. Even the most righteous were opposed. Even those closest to Allah were misunderstood. So who are we to expect universal approval? Allah never commanded you to please people. Allah commanded you to obey Him. When pleasing people becomes your priority, you slowly begin to displease Allah. You bend your values, compromise your faith, dilute your principles, and silence your conscience, just so others won't be upset. But let me tell you something powerful. People will still be upset anyway. You please them today, they demand more tomorrow. You sacrifice once, they expect it forever. You lower yourself and they forget your worth. Islam teaches balance, dignity, and self-respect. It teaches us that kindness does not mean self-destruction. Good character does not mean tolerating injustice. Patience does not mean allowing yourself to be used. There is a difference between being gentle and being weak. There is a difference between humility and humiliation. Some people are not asking for kindness, they are asking for control. Some people don't want peace, they want power over you. And when you finally set boundaries, they will call you selfish. When you choose your deen, they will call you extreme. When you protect your heart, they will say you've changed. Yes, you have changed. You have grown. You have awakened. Remember this. If your decision brings you closer to Allah, it does not matter who walks away. On the day of judgment, those people you tried so hard to please will not stand beside you. They will not answer for your compromises. They will not carry your sins. You will stand alone before Allah. And the only question that will matter is not what did people think, but what did Allah command? Subhanallah, how many people abandoned their salah to fit in? How many compromised their hijab, their modesty, their honesty, just to be accepted? How many remain in toxic relationships because they fear being judged? Let me remind you gently, your worth was never dependent on human approval. Allah created you with honor. Allah gave you value before people even knew your name. When you constantly try to please everyone, you lose yourself. You lose your peace. You lose your identity. And worst of all, you lose sincerity with Allah. There is a special kind of freedom that comes when you say, I will do what pleases Allah, even if it disappoints people. That freedom brings peace to the heart. That freedom brings clarity to the mind. That freedom brings barakah into your life. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone deserves an explanation. Not everyone deserves your energy. Protect your heart. Protect your iman. Protect your relationship with Allah. If someone walks away because you chose obedience, let them walk. Allah will replace them with something better, either better people or better peace. Stop apologizing for having boundaries. Stop feeling guilty for choosing halal over approval. Stop breaking yourself just to keep others whole. You were not created to be liked by everyone. You were created to worship Allah, so stand firm. Speak the truth with wisdom. Be kind without compromising your faith. Love people but love Allah more. Respect others but never at the cost of your deen. And remember, when Allah is pleased with you, it does not matter who is not. You cannot please everyone. Seeking constant approval leads to exhaustion, disappointment, and loss of self. Even the righteous were criticized. So stop chasing opinions. Many people spend their entire lives chasing acceptance. From the moment they wake up, their actions are shaped by how others might react. They adjust their words, hide their true feelings, and suppress their values just to avoid displeasing someone. Slowly, this constant need for approval drains the soul. The heart becomes tired, the mind becomes anxious, and peace feels impossible. This happens because deep inside, a person is trying to do something that was never possible to begin with, pleasing everyone. No matter how kind you are, someone will misunderstand you. No matter how generous you become, someone will say it was not enough. No matter how careful you are with your words, someone will still be offended. Even those who lived the most righteous lives were criticized, mocked, and rejected. If that was their reality, then how can we expect universal approval for ourselves? Wanting to be liked by everyone is a burden no human being was created to carry. Islam does not teach us to live for opinions, it teaches us to live with purpose. When a person makes people the center of their decisions, they begin to lose direction. They say yes when they should say no. They remain silent when truth needs to be spoken. They sacrifice their peace just to keep others comfortable. Over time, they forget who they truly are. Their identity becomes tied to reactions, and their self-worth depends on validation. This is why the heart never feels satisfied, because it is seeking comfort from a place that was never meant to provide it. One of the most painful realities is that pleasing people has no finish line. The moment you meet one expectation, another appears. The moment you sacrifice once, it becomes a habit others expect from you. People quickly become used to your effort but rarely appreciate the cost. They may praise you when you give, but they disappear when you are tired. And when you finally stop, when you finally choose yourself or your faith, the same people who benefited from your kindness may turn against you. They may call you selfish, cold, or changed. But growth always looks like change to those who benefited from your silence. When you stop over-explaining, when you start setting boundaries, when you choose what is right over what is popular, not everyone will stay. And that is okay. Life was never meant to be lived by collecting approval. It was meant to be lived with sincerity. Real peace does not come from being liked, it comes from being aligned with what is right. Islam teaches us balance. It teaches kindness without weakness and patience without humiliation. Being gentle does not mean allowing yourself to be used. Being forgiving does not mean accepting repeated harm. And being respectful does not mean abandoning your values. There is a difference between lowering your ego for the sake of Allah and lowering your self-worth for the sake of people. One elevates you, the other destroys you. Many people fear setting boundaries because they are afraid of losing relationships. But a relationship that only survives when you are exhausted is not a blessing. A connection that requires you to disobey Allah to maintain it is not worth keeping. If someone walks away because you chose what is right, their departure may actually be a form of protection. Sometimes Allah removes people not as a punishment but as a mercy. On the day of judgment, no one you try to please will stand beside you to answer for your compromises. No one will carry the weight of the prayers you delayed, the truth you hid, or the values you sacrificed. You will stand alone, and the only question that will matter is whether you live to please Allah or to impress people. That realization alone should free the heart from chasing approval. True freedom begins when you accept that not everyone needs to like you. You were not created to be understood by everyone, approved by everyone, or praised by everyone. You were created with purpose, dignity, and honor. When you choose obedience over popularity, clarity enters your life. When you choose truth over comfort, peace enters your heart. And when you choose Allah over people, Allah gives you something far greater than approval. He gives you contentment. So let go of the need to please everyone. Be kind, but be firm. Be gentle, but be clear. Do good, but do it for the sake of Allah alone. When Allah is pleased with you, it does not matter who is not. Pleasing Allah comes first. Islam teaches obedience to Allah over human approval. Compromising faith to satisfy people brings no peace or reward. At some point in life, every believer is faced with a quiet but powerful test, whose pleasure truly comes first. It often begins subtly. A small compromise here, a softened stance there, a delayed obligation because it might upset someone. Slowly, the heart starts leaning toward people's approval, and without realizing it, the pleasure of Allah is pushed to the background. This is one of the most dangerous shifts a person can make, because it replaces divine guidance with human opinion. Human approval is unstable. It changes with moods, benefits, and circumstances. Today you are praised because you agree. Tomorrow you are criticized because you stand firm. If your sense of peace depends on people, then your peace will never last. Islam came to free us from this slavery. It came to lift us from living under the weight of what will they say and to place our hearts under the care of Allah alone. Allah knows your intentions when no one else does. People judge your actions, but Allah sees your heart. You may do something sincerely and still be misunderstood. You may speak the truth with wisdom and still be rejected. But rejection from people does not mean failure with Allah. In fact, many times it is the opposite. The path of obedience has always been lonely because it requires courage. It requires standing firm when it would be easier to blend in. When pleasing people becomes the goal, faith slowly weakens. Prayer is delayed to avoid comments. Modesty is compromised to avoid standing out. Honesty is adjusted to avoid conflict. These may seem like small things, but small compromises build habits, and habits shape character. A person may still appear religious on the outside, but inside they are exhausted, conflicted, and distant from Allah. This is because the heart was never meant to be divided between truth and approval. Allah never asked you to make everyone happy. That responsibility is impossible. Instead, Allah asked you to be sincere. Sincerity brings peace even when the world disagrees with you. It gives you strength when you are alone and clarity when you are confused. When your intention is for Allah, you are no longer controlled by reactions. Praise does not inflate you and criticism does not break you. Your heart remains stable because it is attached to something eternal. Many people fear that choosing Allah over people will lead to loneliness, but what they do not realize is that constant people-pleasing is already lonely. It leaves you unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. You are present but not truly known. When you finally choose obedience, you may lose some people, but you gain yourself. You gain your values, you gain your peace, and most importantly, you gain closeness to Allah. Sometimes Allah allows people to turn away from you when you stand for what is right, not to harm you but to teach you reliance, to remind you that your strength was never in numbers and your worth was never in approval. When doors close because of faith, Allah opens doors that no human being could have opened for you. He replaces loss with contentment and hardship with clarity. On the day when all masks fall, no opinion will matter except the judgment of Allah. The same people you tried to impress will be running from their own deeds. No friendship, no status, no approval will benefit you then. What will benefit you is the courage you had to choose truth over comfort and obedience over acceptance. True success is not being liked by everyone. True success is having a heart that is at peace with Allah. When you live for Him, even your struggles carry meaning. Even your sacrifices feel light. Even your tears are counted. And when Allah is pleased with you, you no longer need the world to clap for you. So choose wisely. Choose sincerity over popularity. Choose obedience over applause. Choose Allah even if it costs you people. Because what you gain in return is far greater than what you leave behind. Set boundaries with dignity. Kindness doesn't mean self-destruction. Protect your iman, your heart, and your values, even if people walk away. Many people struggle with the idea of setting boundaries. They think that being kind means saying yes to everything, that being patient means tolerating everything, and that being forgiving means never standing up for themselves. But Islam teaches a balance between mercy and justice, between compassion and self-respect. There is a profound wisdom in protecting your heart, your faith, and your energy, and this wisdom is often overlooked because people fear being labeled as selfish or harsh. But the reality is that boundaries are not about shutting people out. They are about protecting yourself so that you can live a life of sincerity, strength, and peace. When you fail to set boundaries, you allow your heart to be used, your time to be stolen, and your mind to be burdened unnecessarily. People begin to expect more than they deserve, and slowly what was once voluntary becomes a demand. You may start by helping someone because you want to, but when you never say no, people forget that it was ever a choice. They start taking it for granted. And in that process, your energy diminishes, your focus is scattered, and your connection with Allah weakens because your time and effort are no longer aligned with what truly matters. Setting boundaries is not a sign of arrogance or disrespect. It is a reflection of self-awareness and faith. It is understanding that your resources, your time, your energy, your heart are limited and that they must be spent wisely. Islam is full of examples of this wisdom. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, demonstrated both generosity and firmness. He was incredibly merciful, But he also drew clear lines when necessary. He showed us that being kind does not mean sacrificing your principles, and that one can protect oneself while remaining compassionate and upright. The world often tries to make you feel guilty for setting limits. It tells you that if you say no, you are unkind. It tells you that if you choose your faith over a friendship or a relationship, you are selfish. It tells you that if you remove toxic influences from your life, you are unloving. But Allah has given you the right to protect your heart. He has taught us that our first responsibility is to Him, and that sometimes saying no is not only allowed, it is necessary. When you draw boundaries in a respectful and wise manner, you are not harming anyone, you are preserving yourself to be better, stronger, and more effective in fulfilling your purpose. Boundaries are also essential for protecting your iman. Many people unknowingly compromise their faith in the pursuit of acceptance. They ignore their obligations, bend their principles, and engage in behavior that contradicts their values just to fit in. This leads to spiritual exhaustion, guilt, and confusion. Setting boundaries, on the other hand, creates clarity. It allows you to live with integrity and sincerity. It gives your heart peace because your actions align with your beliefs. And most importantly, it shows that your relationship with Allah takes precedence over all else. Sometimes setting boundaries means saying no to certain people, situations, or habits. Sometimes it means walking away from those who demand too much or drain your energy. Sometimes it means prioritizing your spiritual obligations over social comfort. This can be difficult at first. It may lead to temporary tension or even loss. But in the long term, it brings immense reward. By protecting your heart, you create space for blessings, barakah, and meaningful relationships that respect your limits and uplift your spirit. Allah promises that when we act with wisdom and sincerity, He replaces what is taken with what is better. Boundaries also teach others how to treat you. They establish respect. People learn that your kindness is not weakness and that your patience is not endless. They begin to appreciate your efforts because they recognize that they are not to be taken for granted. By setting limits, you encourage healthy, balanced interactions. You create an environment where people's expectations are reasonable and your contributions are valued rather than exploited. Finally, protecting yourself with boundaries does not diminish your ability to love or give. In fact, it enhances it. When your heart is not stretched thin, your generosity becomes meaningful. When your energy is preserved, your presence becomes impactful. When your mind is focused, your wisdom becomes clear. Boundaries are not walls, they are shields that allow you to engage with the world from a place of strength, compassion, and sincerity. They allow you to live fully in accordance with Allah's guidance, without being pulled in directions that weaken your faith or drain your spirit. So remember that setting boundaries is not selfish. It is wise, it is necessary. It is part of living a life that honors Allah, protects your heart, and strengthens your iman. Protect your energy, protect your time, and protect your soul. By doing so, you ensure that your life is not dictated by the demands of people, but guided by the commands of Allah. When you draw these lines with courage, clarity, and compassion, you create a life of dignity, balance, and peace, a life that reflects the beauty and strength of Islamic teachings. May Allah give us the courage to live for Him alone, the strength to say no when needed, and the wisdom to seek His pleasure above all else. Ameen.